Before you lay your head in any hotel, ask yourself one question: do you really know who owns it? Because sometimes, the person smiling at the door is the last person you ever see. She was just a lady trying to make a life for herself and her family. She came to the city for a job interview and booked a room in a small, quiet hotel called his parent lodge. The owner, Madame Sarah, welcomed her with a warm smile, calm, gentle, almost motherly. Rita felt safe, for now. She smiled back, thinking everything would be fine, and drifted into sleep. But the night carried a strange silence, a silence that felt wrong. Shadows moved where they shouldn't, and the air turned colder with every passing hour. By morning, she never made it to the interview. She never returned home. His parent lodge was not a place of rest, it was a trap. A hotel run by an occultist, a killer who waited patiently for unsuspecting strangers. Madame Sarah, the hotel owner, was no ordinary woman. Behind her calm smile lived darkness. She never killed anyone directly, she had a way of studying her victims first. She targeted the lonely. People who came from far away. People no one would come looking for. Softly, she would ask, "Do you know anyone in this town?" And when she saw fear, confusion, or isolation, she knew they were perfect. That was when her hunt began. To the people of the town, Madame Sarah looked innocent, harmless. They only knew she had a husband somewhere abroad and a grown son. She wasn't friendly. She didn't mingle. She spoke to no one unless necessary. Her routine was simple. Her son. Her workers. Her hotel. Her secrets. No one knew what truly hid behind her gentle eyes. Her son, Caleb, was a tall, intimidating man in his late 20s. He didn't support his mother's dark practices, but he had no choice, he was trapped in the life she built. Yet there was something more dangerous in him, a cruelty sharper than hers. A mind capable of planning wickedness without flinching. Together, mother and son ran his parent lodge, an innocent-looking building hiding something monstrous. Madame Sarah and her son had a dark, perfected routine carried out with frightening calmness. Every night, once the lodge grew quiet and the guests were fast asleep, Madame Sarah would walk the corridors with silent footsteps and a spare key tucked into her wrapper. She never rushed. She never panicked. Her face remained peaceful, as if she were simply checking rooms. But she was hunting. When she unlocked a target's door, she never entered directly. She always paused, listening. Breathing slowly. Watching the rise and fall of her victim's chest. Then she would take out a small clay bowl containing a white, powdered substance, her paralytic charm. With practiced movements, she sprinkled it around the sleeping figure, whispering incantations under her breath until the powder dissolved into the air. Within seconds, the victim's body grew heavy. Their limbs stiffened. Their voice disappeared into silence. The mind would be awake, trapped, unable to scream. That was when she summoned Caleb. He came reluctantly, every time. His face emotionless, his steps heavy, his conscience long dead. He hated what he had become, yet he obeyed, bound by fear, manipulation, and the dark oath his mother forced upon him as a child. Caleb would lift the paralyzed victim effortlessly, carrying them through a hidden door behind the storage room, a door no guest ever noticed. Down a narrow staircase lay the underground chamber. The secret room. The place where screams never escaped. Its walls were lined with old chains, rusted hooks, and blood-stained tools. Lamps burned with a strange greenish flame that seemed to flicker even when the air was still. There, Madame Sarah performed her rituals. Some nights were for blood. Blood that she collected carefully in gold containers for power, longevity, and wealth. Other nights were for body parts. Organs, limbs, flesh that she preserved for the buyers who contacted her through coded messages. Kolechi handled the bodies with cold precision. He dismantled evidence with the mind of a man who had long accepted the devil he served. Their underground room had soundproof walls they built themselves. Their secret freezer had double locks. Their truck followed back roads only they knew. Their rituals left no trace. Their small truck, an old blue pickup, was used only at night. Only Caleb drove it. He would load the bodies or neatly packed parts into the back, cover them with sacks of grains, and deliver them to distant buyers who paid in cash large, heavy envelopes that smelled of rot and wealth. Whatever body parts didn't sell immediately were stored in a freezer hidden beneath the house. No one knew. Not even the workers. The hotel's generator rarely failed because if it ever did, the freezer's contents would expose everything. This was the true heart of his parent lodge. Not hospitality. Not comfort. But dead quiet, organized, and profitable. Madame Sarah and Caleb were not careless killers. They were meticulous. Every move they made was calculated, rehearsed, perfected over years of practice. They chose their victims carefully, never locals, never people whose names carried weight, never guests who mentioned family nearby. Only the invisible ones. Only the lonely invisible ones. Only the lonely. They wiped fingerprints. They scrubbed every trace of struggle. They washed sheets twice, sometimes 3 times. They destroyed IDs, burned clothes, and scattered belongings so it looked like the victims had checked out and disappeared. In the morning, Madame Sarah would stand at the front desk, still water, smiling at new guests as if her hands were not stained with last night's blood. To outsiders, his parent lodge looked peaceful, too peaceful. No noise. No drama. No complaints. The townspeople never suspected a thing. People traveled, people disappeared. It was nothing new. And Madame Sarah and Caleb. They were too quiet, too careful, too invisible to ever be accused. They believed they were untouchable. That their wickedness was perfectly hidden. That no one, living or dead, could expose their secrets. They believed. Rita arrived at the lodge exhausted from the long trip. She approached the reception and politely requested a room. Madame Sarah smiled and handed her the key to room 5. Rita paid and climbed the quiet corridor to her room. Inside, she took a refreshing bath, washing away the dust of her journey. She called her parents to assure them she had arrived safely. Then she phoned her friend Juliet, who was also attending the interview, but Juliet had booked another hotel. After the calls, Rita knelt to pray, asking for strength for the next day. Feeling lighter, she lay down on the bed and drifted into a deep sleep. She didn't know that shadows were already watching her. She didn't know that room 5 had a history. She didn't know that this night was her last. That night, far away in the quiet village, Mama Nechi woke up with a scream that tore through the darkness. Her heart was pounding. Her wrapper was soaked in sweat. Papa Imhika jumped up immediately and grabbed her shoulders. Nkechi, what is it? What did you see? But she couldn't speak at first. Her hands were trembling. Tears gathered in her eyes. I saw Rita. She whispered, voice shaking. Emeka, I saw our daughter. Crying for help. Something was dragging her, something dark. Her husband pulled her close, fear tightening his own chest, but he tried to stay strong for her. Sure, it's just a dream, he said softly, though his own voice was unsteady. Let us pray. Both of them knelt beside their old wooden bed. Their hands locked together. Their voices trembled as they prayed, calling God to protect their only child. When they finished praying, Mama Nkechi grabbed her phone with shaking fingers and dialed Rita's number. It rang. Once. Twice. 5 times. No answer. She tried again, panic rising with every ring. Still no answer. Her breathing became uneven. Why is she not picking? Rita always picks my call, always. She tried again and again, each ring stabbing deeper into her heart. Still nothing. Papa placed his hand over hers. It's late, maybe she's sleeping already. She has an interview tomorrow. Leave it till morning. But her eyes were full of fear she couldn't explain, fear she couldn't shake. Finally, exhausted and trembling, she dropped the phone on the bed. But sleep did not return. She sat there in the darkness, eyes fixed on the silent phone, praying it would ring, praying her daughter was safe. Inside room 5, at almost the same time her mother was waking up from her nightmare, Rita was trapped in one of her own. She saw shadows moving. Hands reaching for her. A whisper calling her name from a dark corner. Rita, Rita. Suddenly a face appeared, blurry, terrifying, too close. She screamed and shot up from the bed, her whole body shaking. Her breath came in quick gasps. Her chest tightened with fear. For a moment she couldn't even understand where she was. The room felt colder. Too quiet. Too still. Her throat was dry, unbearably dry. She needed water. She reached for the table beside the bed, but the bottle was empty. Oh. No water, she murmured to herself, frustrated and uneasy. Her heart was still racing, but she forced herself to get up. She slipped on her slippers, wrapped her scarf around her shoulders, and stepped out into the hallway. The corridor was dim, only one bulb flickering weakly. She walked toward the reception area, hoping to find someone awake. That was when she saw him, Caleb, the owner's son, leaning against the counter, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when he heard her footsteps, surprise flickering across his face. "Good evening, Ma," he said softly. "You're still awake?" Rita tried to smile. "Yes. Sorry. I needed water. The one in my room is finished." Caleb straightened immediately. "No problem. Let me get you another." He went to the small fridge behind the counter, brought out a cold bottle, and handed it to her. "Here," he said, watching her closely. "Are you okay? You look shaken." Rita hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I had a nightmare. It felt so real." For the first time that night, Caleb's hardened expression softened. They began to talk about her journey, her interview, her village. They even laughed a little when she told him how her mother checks on her 10 times a day. Caleb watched her quietly. And something shifted inside him. Something he didn't expect. He had seen many guests. He had watched many victims. But this girl, Rita, there was something different about her. Her kindness. Her innocence. Her smile trying to hide her fear. For the first time in a long time, he felt pity. A strange heaviness settled in his chest, a feeling he couldn't name, one he wasn't used to. He looked at her in a way he had never looked at any woman before. Almost as if he was seeing a person, not a target. "Please," he said quietly, "go back to your room and sleep. You'll be fine." Rita thanked him, holding the bottle tightly, unaware that the man standing before her, this tall, quiet stranger, was part of the nightmare waiting in that hotel. But tonight, something had changed. And Caleb felt it deep inside him. When Rita walked back down the hallway with her bottle of water, Caleb remained standing behind the reception desk, staring after her long after she disappeared into room 5. For the first time in years, he felt something he didn't know how to handle. A tightness in his chest. A heaviness in his mind. A voice whispering deep inside him, "She doesn't deserve this." He ran a hand over his face, frustrated. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to be cold. Detached. Obedient. His mother had trained him that. No emotions, no attachments. Guests were not people, they were opportunities. Tools. Offerings. But tonight, Rita's trembling voice, her soft laughter, her tired eyes. It all stayed with him. He remembered how her hands shook slightly when she collected the water. How she kept thanking him politely, even though she could barely stand straight from fear and exhaustion. How her smile was warm, innocent, real. And that was what disturbed him the most. He wasn't used to innocence. He wasn't used to seeing someone who still believed in goodness. Someone who still prayed before sleeping, someone whose parents were calling her non-stop because they cared. He leaned heavily on the counter and exhaled. This girl, he muttered under his breath. Why did she have to come here tonight? Because now his heart was betraying him. He could feel it. Confusion, pity, something dangerously close to affection. But mixed with that emotion was fear. Fear of his mother. He knew what Madame Sarah was capable of. He knew what would happen if she noticed even the smallest change in him. He knew disobedience was not an option. He paced slowly behind the reception table, running his fingers through his hair. He tried to shake off the feeling, but Rita's face wouldn't leave his mind. Her voice wouldn't leave his ears. And her nightmare. The way she said it felt real. It sent chills down his spine. For the first time, he asked himself a question he never dared to think before. Can I really let this happen to her? He swallowed hard. His heart said no. But his fear said yes. And the war inside him had only just begun. Midnight came quietly. The whole hotel was silent. Too silent. Only the sound of a distant generator hummed through the walls. Rita was deep asleep, breathing softly, unaware that danger had already stepped into her room. With a slow, careful motion, Madame Sarah unlocked the door using her spare key. The door opened without a sound. She had oiled it earlier, just for this purpose. Her face was calm. Her steps, no mercy, were gentle. She looked like a mother checking on a sleeping child. But her intentions were far from innocent. She moved straight to Rita's bedside and brought out a small leather pouch. With practiced ease, she sprinkled a white powder around the bed, on the floor, on the pillow, and lightly over Rita's feet. Rita didn't wake. The powder kept her still. Kept her silent. Kept her helpless. Madame Sarah watched her for a moment, nodding to herself in satisfaction. Then she slipped out of the room quietly and went to call her son. Caleb, she whispered sharply as she opened his door. It's time. Caleb froze. His heart dropped. He knew this moment would come, but he had secretly prayed something would delay it anything. His chest tightened painfully. Every part of him wanted to say no, but he knew his mother. Refusal was not an option. With reluctant steps, he followed her back to room 5. Rita lay motionless, completely unaware as Caleb bent down beside her. His hands trembled slightly. His mother noticed, but said nothing. Carry her, Madame Sarah ordered quietly. Let's finish this. Caleb swallowed hard. His jaw clenched. But he obeyed. He lifted Rita gently into his arms. She felt light, fragile. Too innocent for the darkness awaiting her. He carried her through a hidden door behind the reception, a door no guest had ever noticed. Stairs led down into the underground chamber. The air changed colder, thicker, filled with the smell of old rituals and secrets. Kolechi laid Rita on a wooden table and tied her hands and feet, avoiding her face. Unable to look directly at her, Madame Sarah began preparing the ritual items, humming a low, haunting tune that echoed across the stone walls. Caleb stood still, heart pounding loudly in his ears. She was ready. Rita was helpless. And the ritual was about to begin. But inside him, a battle was raging, one that could change everything. Madame Sarah and Caleb were in the underground chamber, preparing for the ritual. When suddenly, footsteps. Soft but unmistakable. Someone was walking above them. The sound echoed faintly through the ceiling, slow. Steady. Cautious. Caleb froze. Madame Sarah's eyes narrowed sharply. No one else knew about the underground. No worker. No guest. No friend. No outsider. Only the two of them. Their secret was supposed to be perfect. Madame Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper, sharp as a blade. Who is walking there at this hour? Everyone should be asleep. Caleb clenched his jaw. Fear wasn't something he felt often, but this sound was wrong. Too deliberate. Too slow. As if someone was searching. Or listening. He grabbed the torch and looked at his mother. Did you lock the basement door? I always do, she snapped softly. No one comes down here. No one. But the footsteps continued. Tap. 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 Right above the ritual chamber. Caleb's heartbeat tightened in his chest. If someone discovered the basement door, if someone found out everything he rituals, the bodies, the years of secrecy would collapse. Madame Sarah's eyes sharpened like a predator sensing danger. Leave it. She whispered to Caleb. Continue with the ritual. I'll check who is wandering around. Caleb nodded reluctantly, his jaw tight. He turned back toward Rita's motionless body, preparing the next steps with cold precision. Madame Sarah climbed the narrow staircase that led to the hidden basement door. Her heartbeat was calm, controlled, but her mind raced. No one should be awake at this hour. No one should be near that part of the lodge. No one should have heard anything. She reached the top of the stairs. And her breath caught. The door was slightly open. Not wide. Not swinging. Just cracked open enough to show someone had touched it. Her eyes flashed with anger and dread. Someone was here. She pushed the door fully open and stepped into the hallway. The lodge was silent, the dim bulbs flickering gently. But she could feel it, an energy that didn't belong. A presence. Someone had stood right here not long ago. She walked down the corridor, scanning every corner with sharp focus. She checked the guest rooms, the storage room, the back corridor, even behind the reception counter. No one. But the air still held the warmth of a recently opened door. Someone had been there. Someone had seen something. Her heartbeat grew cold. After searching everywhere and finding nothing, she returned to the basement door, still slightly ajar, still wrong. By the time she descended the stairs, Caleb was already done. The part of the ritual that required him was complete. He had packed everything neatly into black bags, his face blank and hardened, though something uneasy flickered in his eyes. He didn't ask questions. He didn't explain. He simply lifted the bags onto his shoulder. Madame Sarah followed him through the back exit leading to the hidden pickup truck. Caleb loaded the bags quietly, started the engine, and drove off into the night to make the deliveries. The red tail lights faded into darkness. Madame Sarah stood alone in the cold silence. She locked the gate. She walked back into the lodge. Everything looked normal, exactly as it should be. But her mind was restless. She didn't see anyone. But that door didn't open by itself. Those footsteps didn't come from the wind. Someone was here. Someone saw something. And whoever it was, would become a threat. Her breath tightened. She whispered to herself. No one must uncover this. Not now. Not ever. The next morning, Madame Sarah gathered all 5 of her workers in the hotel's small back hall. Her face looked calm as always, but her eyes were sharp, watchful. She studied each of them one by one, as if trying to peel their thoughts open. I want to know, she said quietly, which of you was outside last night? A heavy silence fell. The workers looked at one another, confused. Some shifted nervously, some looked offended, but all of them shook their heads. Auntie, we were all asleep, one of them said softly. Yes, ma, nobody came outside yesterday night, another added. But Madame Sarah didn't believe them. She knew what she heard. She knew someone had walked near the underground door. Someone had witnessed something they were not meant to see. Her suspicion grew like fire. To make sure none of them were lying and to protect her secrets, she brought out a small black calabash covered with strange markings, a red rope, and a clay bowl filled with dark powder. The moment they saw it, the workers froze. "Since all of you claim you were asleep," she said, voice low and chilling, "you will swear today." Fear spread across their faces, but none of them dared protest. One by one, she made them step forward. She tied the red rope around their wrists. She pressed the dark powder into their palms. And she made them repeat the oath. "I will not speak of anything I see or hear in this hotel. Even if I see death. Even if I see blood. If I speak, may the earth judge me." Their voices trembled as they repeated the words. When they finished, Madame Sarah watched them closely. She saw fear, confusion, and obedience, exactly what she wanted. But deep inside her, she was still uneasy. Someone had been there last night. Someone had seen something. Someone was now a threat. And Madame Sarah knew one thing for certain. She had to find them before they spoke. One of Madame Sarah's workers, Adeabi, sat alone in her tiny staff room, trembling. She was only 22, and often struggling to care for her two younger siblings. Every month, her small salary from his parent lodge was the only thing keeping them fed. But last night, everything changed. She couldn't stop replaying what she saw. The sound of footsteps. Madame Sarah running upstairs. Caleb dragging something heavy. The smell she couldn't describe. And the glimpse, just a glimpse of a body. Adeabi's heart pounded hard. She wanted to resign. She wanted to run far away. But she knew one terrible truth. If she resigned, Madame Sarah would know. Know that she was the one outside. The one who opened the door. The one whose footsteps disturbed them. The one who saw everything. Her hands shook as she held her pillow to her chest. Tears rolled down her face silently. She couldn't tell anyone. She couldn't escape. She couldn't resign. Because Madame Sarah wasn't an ordinary woman. And Adeabi knew. Madame Sarah would hunt her down. So she stayed in her room, shaking, heartbroken and terrified, wondering, how long before they come for me? Back in Rita's village, her friend Juliet couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. When Rita didn't show up at the interview and wasn't picking her calls, Juliet rushed straight to her house. She arrived to find Rita's parents pacing outside, faces pale with worry. "We've been calling her," Mama Nkechi said with trembling hands. "Her phone is off. She didn't call this morning. She didn't tell us she reached the interview center." Juliet quickly explained everything. "Rita didn't meet me where we planned. She didn't come for the interview either. I've been calling her, nothing." The house fell silent. Then Mama Nkechi gasped softly and held her chest. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew something was wrong. I had a dream last night. A terrible dream." She told them how she woke up screaming, how she called Rita in fear. But Amora never picked up. Right there, the three of them started calling again Rita's number, the company where she was supposed to interview. But nothing. Then Mama Nkechi remembered. She told us the name of the hotel. His parent lodge. That was all they needed. Within an hour, Rita's parents and Juliet were on the road rushing toward the town where the hotel was located. But by the time they arrived, it was late. Too late to move around safely. So they stopped by the biggest church in the town, the old white building known as Christ Haven. History. They explained their situation to the pastor and members. The church welcomed them with compassion. Gave them a place to sleep. Prayed with them through the night. And early the next morning, before the sun fully rose, they set out for his parent lodge. Determined. Afraid. And desperate for answers. When they arrived at his parent lodge, Rita's mother, her father, and Juliet walked straight to the reception desk. Fear sat heavily in their throats. The young receptionist looked up with a polite smile. "Yes, how may I help you?" "We are looking for my daughter," Rita's mother said, her voice trembling. "She lodged here yesterday. Her name is Rita Nwosu." The receptionist pulled out the hotel register and flipped through the pages slowly. Too slowly. After a long moment, she shook her head. "No, ma'am. Nobody by that name checked in. We had no guest like that yesterday." Rita's mother's heart dropped. "That's not possible," she snapped. "My daughter called me from this hotel. She told me the name. She showed me the room on video call." Her voice rose in panic. Her hands shook. Juliet stepped forward. "We are not mistaken. Please check again. Please." But the receptionist repeated calmly, "There is no Rita here." Suspicion burned in her mother's chest like fire. She pointed toward the corridor. "Then let me check the rooms myself." "Sorry, Ma," the receptionist replied quickly. "We cannot allow that." That was the moment Rita's mother knew something was deeply wrong. She stormed out of the lodge, gathered her family and Juliet, and headed straight to the police station. At the station, they met 3 officers. Breathlessly, they explained everything. Officer Teda, a sharp, observant man in his late 30s, listened closely. He watched the mother's trembling hands. He saw the fear in Juliet's eyes. He sensed truth in their story. Without wasting time, Officer Teda and 2 other officers followed them back to the hotel. This time, Madam Sarah herself was at the reception. "Good afternoon, officers," she said softly. "How may I help you?" "We are investigating a missing person," Officer Teda said. "A young lady named Rita Nwosu. Her family says she lodged here yesterday." Madam Sarah's calm face did not shake. "We've never seen such a person," she replied coldly. The officers asked to check around the hotel. Madam Sarah allowed it. She had already cleaned all traces. The rooms looked perfect. The halls clean. Nothing out of place. No evidence. No stain. No sign of a struggle. But when they reached room 5, something changed. Rita's mother froze at the doorway. "This is it," she whispered. "She showed me this door. This curtain. This bed." Her voice cracked with certainty. Officer Teda looked around quietly. He noticed faint marks on the floor, almost like dragging. He noticed the scent of something recently cleaned. He noticed Madam Sarah watching them too closely. He said nothing, but he saw everything. When the search was over, they returned to the reception. Officer Teddy gave Madam Sarah a polite smile. "Thank you for your cooperation, Ma. We'll contact you if we need more information." Sarah smiled back, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. The police escorted the family back outside. At the station, Teda pulled Rita's parents aside. "I believe you," he whispered. "Something is wrong in that lodge. I will find your daughter. Please. Go home for now. Come back here in 2 days. I promise you I won't rest." Hope flickered in the mother's eyes for the first time since the nightmare. They left the station with heavy hearts, but with a small spark of faith. Faith that someone, somewhere, was finally taking them seriously. Officer Teda left the hotel that afternoon, but his mind refused to rest. Something wasn't right. He replayed every detail. Madam Sarah's oddly calm face. Caleb's forced friendliness. The too clean reception book. And then Adeabi. She was the crack in the wall. As he walked out of the hotel gate in his plain clothes, he noticed her. Adeabi, one of the workers standing by the side of the building, pretending to sweep. Her hands shook slightly. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Something heavy sat in her spirit. Something she was terrified to speak about. Officer Taylor slowed down. He turned back casually, pretending to ask for directions, and she stiffened immediately. He knew. This girl had seen something. He didn't push. Not yet. He simply greeted her with a friendly nod and left. But the fear in her eyes confirmed what he suspected. Someone in his parent lodge was hiding the truth. Teda returned to the station and began his own underground investigation on Adebi. He found out her full story. She was an orphan, the eldest of 3 siblings, working at the lodge because she had no other choice. Barely surviving, yet carrying a burden far heavier than her small frame could hold. Later that evening, he visited her home. Her siblings sat outside, looking hungry and tired. Adebi came out with a scarf tied around her head, clearly shaken to see him. He asked gently, "Were you anywhere around the hotel last night?" Her eyes widened. She swallowed hard. And then she lied. "No, sir. I didn't see anything." But Teda could hear her breathing change. He saw her hands tighten around her wrapper. Fear controlled her. She was protecting her life. And her siblings. He didn't force her. He simply left with a calm, "I'm always around if you need to talk." Meanwhile, back at the hotel, something unusual was happening. Caleb, after the night of the ritual, was a completely different person. For the first time in years, he greeted the workers. He laughed loudly at the front desk. He held doors open. He even helped carry a traveler's bag. Everyone noticed. Madame Sarah noticed too, and it worried her. She watched him from the staircase, her face darkening. Her son never behaved like this after a ritual. Usually, he became colder, crueler, hungrier. But now, he looked almost human. She didn't know the reason behind his sudden change. She didn't know about the way he looked at Rita when she asked him for water the night before. Or how something soft had shifted inside him. She didn't know that Caleb, for the first time in his life, was feeling something his dark heart wasn't used to. And that feeling was about to destroy everything. That night, far away in the village, Mama Nkechi could not sleep. Her heart was heavy. She cried herself to sleep, thinking about her daughter. And then, she dreamed. In the dream, she saw Rita. Rita was crying, sweating, shaking. "Help me, Mama," she screamed. "I am here. I am in room 5. It is hot here. Please help me." Mama Nkechi woke up screaming. Her husband rushed to her side and held her tightly. She told him everything she saw in the dream. Without wasting time, they joined hands and prayed together. After the prayer, they called Officer Teda and told him about the dream. Officer Teda listened carefully and said calmly, "Please be strong. Investigation is ongoing." But deep in his heart, he knew something was very wrong. Back at the police station, something unexpected happened. A man walked in nervously. He told the officers he had heard at the church where Rita's parents slept that a young lady was missing. Then he told his own story. He said he once lodged at his parent lodge with a friend. That at midnight, a woman entered their room and poured a white substance on them. He said she later called her son to come and carry them. But that night, he was not asleep. He escaped out, but his friend is nowhere to be found till today. He said he had gone to another police station before, but no one believed him. People never believed him because he was known to drink alcohol. This time, Officer Teda believed him. Everything began to connect. Officer Teda went back to Adeabi, the hotel worker. At first, she denied knowing anything. But fear was written all over her face. She finally said, with a shaking voice, "If I talk, I will die. Then she paused and added, but I am ready to help you. Back at the hotel. Since the night of the ritual, Kolechi had been unusually happy. He talked freely with the workers. He laughed. He moved around like a man with no burden. But deep within the walls of his parent lodge, fear, secrets, and blood still lingered. And somewhere beneath the hotel, the truth was waiting to be uncovered. Officer Tede decided to take a risk. He planted a stranger, an outsider with no connection to the town. The man arrived at his parent lodge late in the evening, pretending to be a traveler on a long journey. When Madame Sarah questioned him, asking if he knew anyone in the town, he answered calmly that he was only passing through and needed a place to sleep before continuing his journey the next morning. After studying him carefully, they gave him a room, but not room 5. Inside the room, the man did exactly as Officer Tede had instructed. He quietly set up a hidden camera and stayed alert, pretending to sleep. Hours passed. Nothing strange happened. No footsteps. No whispers. No midnight visit. Across the road, hidden in the darkness, Officer Tede and his colleague watched the hotel closely. They were not in uniform. They waited silently, ready to storm the building at the slightest sign of trouble. But that night, nothing happened. The lodge remained quiet. Too quiet. And Officer Tede knew one thing for sure. Danger doesn't always move when you expect it to. Hours passed. At about 1 a.m., the man called Officer Tede and said nothing strange had happened. Midnight had passed, and the hotel seemed quiet. He off the hidden camera. He wanted to leave. Officer Tede told him to stay a little longer. They may be very careful tonight, he said. At the same time, Officer Tede called the maid. He asked her to quietly check Madame Sarah and her son. Trembling with fear, she sneaked closer and saw them talking in low voices, silent, tense, and dangerous. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she felt it in her bones. She reported everything to Officer Tede. Something was about to happen. Back in the room, the planted guest dropped his call and lay down, pretending to sleep. Suddenly, he noticed the door handle slowly twisting. Someone was trying to open the door. His heart raced. He quickly sent a signal to Officer Tede. The door opened. Madame Sarah entered calmly, just as she always did. She poured the white substance on the man. Instantly, his body went stiff. He couldn't move. He couldn't speak. She left and returned with her son. Caleb carried the paralyzed man out of the room. Caleb carried the paralyzed man toward the underground room. The maid followed them quietly, her heart beating wildly. She watched everything. The hidden door. The stairs. The secret room beneath the hotel. Inside the underground chamber, the man was laid on the table, unable to move, unable to scream. The ritual tools were ready. Blood stains covered the floor. Human body parts were carefully arranged in bowls and bags. Just as they were about to begin, the maid did exactly what Officer Tede had instructed her to do. She deliberately let her phone ring. The sound echoed loudly in the underground room. Madame Sarah froze. Caleb turned sharply. "Who is there?" Madame Sarah whispered angrily. They rushed out to check. Outside, they caught the maid trying to run. She screamed, but Caleb quickly covered her mouth as they dragged her back. That was when everything changed. Officer Tede and his colleagues stormed into the hotel, guns raised. "Police, don't move." Madame Sarah and Caleb were arrested on the spot. The maid led the officers back to the underground room. There, they found the planted victim still alive but paralyzed. They saw everything: the blood, the ritual table, human parts, and the hidden chamber. That had swallowed many lives. The truth could no longer be hidden. At the station, Madame Sarah finally confessed. She confessed to killing many innocent people. She confessed to running rituals for money, power, and long life. She confessed to killing Rita. But she said one thing again and again. My son knows nothing. I did everything alone. After her confession, Madame Sarah began to cough violently. Blood poured from her mouth. Before anyone could help her, she collapsed and died. Her secrets died with her, or so everyone thought. After his mother's death, Caleb spoke. He told Officer Tade that Rita was not dead. He said he did not kill her. He confessed that when he carried her that night, something changed in him. He said he fell in love with her. Instead of killing her, he hid her in a faraway place where no one could find her. The police followed the address he gave. There, they found Rita alive. She was tied with ropes, weak, traumatized, but breathing. She was rescued immediately. Her parents were called, and she was rushed to the hospital. Tears, prayers, and thanksgiving filled the air. Because Madame Sarah claimed full responsibility, and there was no clear evidence that Kelechi directly killed anyone, the case became complicated. The two victims who survived were paralyzed when Caleb carried them. They could not identify who carried them. Caleb claimed he rescued Rita from his mother. In the end, Caleb was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Justice seemed to have been served. But evil was only sleeping. After 5 years, Caleb was released. He returned quietly. He went back to a hidden property his mother once owned. There, he opened a new hotel. A new name. A new place. The same darkness. In his heart, Caleb believed his mother died to save him. He believed he owed her a duty to continue the rituals. And once again strangers began to disappear. There are many people like Caleb walking freely among us. They smile. They talk. Gently. Do not lodge in a hotel when you know nothing about the owner. Because sometimes, evil wears a friendly face.